Once Ulterion grabbed his numerical yak hair, he had to stop a band of mercenaries from conquering a small halfling town. But that's a story for another day. Ulterion found himself in a swamp in the country Skoonscraig. Ulterion was worried, as he should, for Skoonscraig wasn't part of the Tolerance Treaty. It was created after the last Flapjack War. Skoonscraig was full of xenophobic humans who also didn't like other humans, with a military called the Conquerors by Dawn. They were called such due to the belief that one day the sun will shine on their empire. Anyway, enough history. Ulterion wanted to leave as soon as he could. He read his list.
What am I grabbing in this supper place?
Ulterion smiled when he found the item on the list.
A swamp lily.
Ulterion's smile faded.
A swamp lily?
Ulterion's change of mood was due to the swamp lily being a very rare plant. Meanwhile, a few conquerors moving through the swamp. They were miserable trudging through the swamp water and mud. Even with their armor, the mosquitoes were relentless. They were following their leader, Durgus, which they were not too happy about. They were displeased due to their leader being a teenage boy. He was the youngest man to become a sunrise, as symbolized by the sunrise tattoo on his forehead. He had earned every line in that tattoo through heroic deeds. At least that's what the Empire would call heroic, and made his fellow older soldiers not appreciate being bossed around by a snot-nosed brat. Durgus heard the complaints but did not care. His mind was on the mission and not on the clucking hens. His second-in-command, Throt, walked up to the young leader.
We have scouted this area for days, sir. I don't think we have any threats.
Durgus gave Throt a sardonic look.
Most of those days were us leaving the capital.
Yes, but...
So that means we didn't scout the perimeter. Now, remind me, what is our mission?
Scout the perimeter.
Good, you remembered. Wonderful. Now we can get back to our duty.
Throt sneered.
Yes, sir.
Durgus went back to looking for problems. Something caught Durgus' eye. Floating in the puddle in the swamp water was a purple swamp lily. This made the hardened young warrior smile.
Wow, a swamp lily. Must be my lucky day.
Durgus placed the rare flower on his armor. Ulterion continued his seemingly endless trudge through the swamp. Night had fallen, and Ulterion was beginning to lose hope.
I thought those damn yaks were a problem.
The conquerors had set up camp. Throt was setting up his tent. He had noticed that Durgus was nowhere to be found.
Where is he?
Ulterion continued to trudge through the swamp. He stopped when he saw something in the distance.
What's that?
Ulterion squinted and found it was a conqueror.
Oh, shit.
Ulterion jumped into a bush. Durgus looked around when he heard some bushes rustle. He went to investigate. Throt saw Durgus walking towards something. A thought came to him. No one was watching. The young leader could have just had an accident. Throt slightly unsheathed his sword. Throt followed his leader. Ulterion hid in his bush, quivering in fear.
Don't find me, don't find me, don't find me.
Durgus approached the quivering bush carefully. Durgus slowly reached for his sword. Ulterion saw the young conqueror coming closer. Throt saw Durgus' back. This was his opportunity. He slowly unsheathed his sword. He crept slowly and quietly closer. He was only a few feet away from ousting his leader when his foot found a dry twig. Durgis heard the twig snap. He spun around to find himself facing Throt.
What are you doing?
Throt was nervous. He had to stay calm.
I saw you go after something. I thought I might help.
Durgis was dubious, but he kept his calm.
Is that right?
Throt nodded. The two men stared at each other in awkward silence. Finally, Durgis broke the silence.
How's camp coming along?
Throt shrugged.
Almost done.
Don't bother me until it's fully done.
Throt sneered.
Yes, sir.
Throt walked away. Durgis watched his subordinate walk away. He knew he could not trust Throt. He was also aware something was watching him from the bushes. He had an idea that he figured would bring the thing out. Ulterion watched the young conqueror walk away. As soon as Ulterion thought the threat was far enough away, he ran off. Ulterion made his way as far as he could away from the camp.
It was too close for comfort. I almost forgot about you.
I figured you did, boy. I figured you did. Hear them what? Did you notice something about that boy's armor? Hear them what?
Ulterion thought for a moment. Ulterion stopped in his tracks as a realization came to him.
He had a swamp lily on his armor.
Ulterion ran back to where he encountered the young conqueror. Ulterion has found his way to the conqueror's camp. He thought his chances were good. There was only one conqueror on watch. And this particular conqueror was preoccupied with digging in his ear that he wouldn't notice much. Ulterion thought that this was his lucky day. He looked around and saw that one tent was bigger than the others. He figured that was the leader's tent.
This shouldn't be too hard.
Ulterion tiptoed around the other tents as quietly as possible. Ulterion checked to make sure he was not spotted by the guard. He looked over to see the guard stretching. Ulterion found his opening and quietly made his way to the big tent. Ulterion slowly opened the flap. The inside was illuminated by the campfire and moonlight. It was not much light, but it was enough to see the swamp lily on the table. Ulterion slowly crept towards the flower. He stopped as he heard a noise. Ulterion was relieved for a moment. He grabbed the lily and started sneaking out. He looked back at the sleeping Durgis.
Yikes. Like the whole swamp, why don't you?
As Ulterion went to leave, he heard something. Then Ulterion felt something on his back, something metal, and with a point that didn't break skin but was enough to hurt. Enough to convey the message of stop.
You know what's funny?
What's that?
Durgis got closer to Ulterion's ear.
I don't even snore.
Yeah. Pretty funny.
As the sun came up that morning, Ulterion found himself down on his knees with his hands tied behind his back and one of Durgis' scimitars to his neck.
Who sent you?
Ulterion looked up in confusion at Durgis.
What do you mean?
Durgis pressed the sword harder to Ulterion's throat.
Don't play coy with me.
I honestly don't know what you're talking about. I swear.
The young conqueror grabbed Ulterion by his collar and pulled him forward, and stared into his eyes fiercely. Ulterion had been interrogated before, so this shouldn't have been anything different, especially from someone who was so young. But there was something about staring into this young man's strong green eyes. Ulterion thought this silent, staring interrogation would go on forever, until Durgis let him go.
He's harmless.
Ulterion and the other conquerors stared at Durgis in shock.
What?
Durgis sneered at Ulterion.
This man is self-serving. He is of no real threat to us. Let him go.
Throt saw this harmless man as an opportunity.
Sir?
Durgis glared at Throt.
What is it?
This man tried to steal from you.
Throt gestured towards Ulterion.
Do you not seek retribution?
He just wanted a flower.
A flower you found, which makes it your property. This man has disrespected you.
Durgis rolled his eyes.
There is no time for this. We have more pressing matters.
If that is your will. Although, if a leader is to allow a thief to disrespect him,
Throt looked to the other conquerors.
I wonder if his men could get away with disrespect.
Durgis gave his men a nervous glance as they talked amongst themselves. Durgis glared back at Throt, who had a sinister smile on his face after the stare down with his second command. Durgis turned his gaze of rage towards Ulterion.
We shall duel, thief.
Ulterion was filled with fear.
I don't need the flower that badly.
Ulterion found himself in a circle made up by the conquerors, with Durgis.
I guess we're doing this.
Durgis stared at Ulterion as he cracked his neck.
Let us get this over with.
Durgis unsheathed his swords.
Are you ready?
Ulterion shrugged.
Not really. I am unarmed.
Durgis rolled his eyes.
Here.
Durgis threw Ulterion a sword. Ulterion looked down at the sword and then looked back to Durgis with a nervous smile.
Thanks.
Ulterion slowly picked up the sword.
Are we doing this today?
Ulterion stared nervously at Durgis.
Not quite.
Now what?
Well, it's just that you're in armor and I'm not.
Durgis took the last piece of armor off. Durgis stood in the leggings and nothing else. Ulterion was jealous of the young man's muscular build, but he knew he had no time to admire it as the boy looked annoyed.
Is it fair now?
As fair as it can be.
Durgis and the other conquerors cringed as Ulterion swung the sword around sloppily. Durgis shook his head in embarrassment for his opponent. Ulterion shrugged, looking confused.
What?
I'll make it more fair.
Durgis stabbed his sword into the ground. Ulterion watched this action in confusion.
Are you sure?
Durgis smirked.
Very.
Throt smirked. He knew the would-be thief was no match for Durgis. He didn't need to be. All Throt needed was a distraction to make his move. It was just a matter of time at this point. Durgis gestured towards Ulterion aggressively.
You asked for it. Ha!
Ulterion summoned up all his might and charged to attack Durgis, but Durgis merely stepped to the side and put out his leg. Ulterion tripped over the outstretched leg, falling on his face in the mud. Ulterion, feeling embarrassed and furious, he jumped to his feet and readied his sword.
Lucky shot.
Durgis looked at Ulterion dubiously.
Sure.
Durgis' snide remark enraged Ulterion further,
Ha!
causing Ulterion to swing his sword wildly, which Durgis dodged easily. Ulterion raised the sword over his head, only to have the young conqueror catch his sword arm. Durgis glared at Ulterion.
Are you done?
Never.
Durgis sneered at Ulterion's verbal riposte. He didn't believe Ulterion's bravado. To be fair, neither did Ulterion.
Well, I am.
Durgis punched Ulterion in the face, sending him spinning around. Once again, Ulterion hits the ground. Durgis walked towards his downed opponent.
You fought valiantly. Well, you fought. Well, you tried. At least, I can give you that.
Ulterion laid upon the ground, watching the young conqueror coming to end him. Ulterion looked away as he waited for the inevitable. His gaze happened upon the flower of the young conqueror's armor. He had a thought. The flower was all he wanted. He didn't have to fight, let's be real, lose to this honorable man. I mean, one of them had to be honorable. Certainly wasn't going to be Ulterion. Ulterion hooked the sword at Durgus, who was surprised by the act, but not that surprised, as he caught it between his hands.
Did you really think that was going to work?
Ulterion shook his head with a smile.
No, I think this will.
Durgus looked puzzled.
What are you...
Durgus was interrupted by a clump of mud hitting his face.
Ah, damn it.
As Durgus was distracted by the mud in his eye,
Son of a bitch, I'm gonna...
Ulterion saw his opening. He jumped up, ran for the flower, grabbed it, and started running. Two conquerors tried to stop him.
Where are you going?
Away!
Ulterion managed to avoid the grasping hands of the conquerors and make his way into the swamp. Throt saw his chance. His leader was blinded and the others were after the thief.
I swear when I get my hands on you, I am going to fight.
You would not get a more perfect situation than this. Throt slowly unsheathed his sword and made his way towards Durgus. As Ulterion ran away, he looked back to see the young conqueror's second in command was standing over his leader, about to dispatch him. Ulterion didn't know why, but he felt the need to help this young man. He shouted to the young conqueror.
Hey kid, look out!
Durgus heard the voice of his enemy, much to his surprise. Durgus didn't have time to wonder about his enemy's warning as he heard his ally coming up from behind. Although his eyes were compromised, his other senses were very keen, and he was able to figure out where Throt would be. Throt brought his sword down on a patch of mud.
What the?
You missed, old man.
Throt turned his head to find Durgus standing next to him, with mud-cleared eyes staring at him. Through him. He'd been caught.
Oh, no.
Durgus grabbed Throt by his collar and brought him inches from his face. He sneered at his ally.
You've gotten slow in your old age, Throt. I think it's time you retired.